A hiker stands in a dead zone. No towers for 100 miles, the phone shows 0 bars, and a storm is coming in. She types a text and hits send, and it goes through. Nobody plugged anything in. Nobody handed her a special satellite phone. It is the same phone that was in your pocket this morning. So how did a message just leave a phone with no signal and reach help? Here is what actually happened. That text did not travel sideways looking for a tower. It went straight up. About 340 miles overhead, a satellite the size of a small bus was streaking past at nearly 5 miles every second. Your ordinary phone talked to it directly, and that should be impossible because of one brutal number. Your phone transmits with less than a single watt, about the power of a laser pointer. A normal cell tower is a few hundred yards away. This target is 340 miles away. By the time your tiny signal climbs all that way, it has faded by a factor of 1,000 billion. It is like trying to hear one person whisper from the far side of a whole city. So how does anything up there hear a whisper that faint? The satellite is built to be a cell tower in space. Once in orbit, it unfolds a flat antenna panel the size of a small apartment, hundreds of square feet of it. That giant surface is a phased array, and it does something clever. Instead of listening to the whole planet at once, it electronically aims a narrow beam at one small patch of ground and pours all its sensitivity there. A huge ear cupped toward you is how it catches the whisper. But there is a second problem. That satellite is not parked overhead. It is screaming past at 4.5 miles a second. Anything moving that fast smears the radio frequency, the same way a siren drops in pitch as it races by. Smear the frequency, and the phone loses the signal. So either the satellite does the math and pre-corrects the smear so an old phone never notices, or a newer phone uses its own GPS to correct itself. Either way, the wobble gets erased. Put it together and an unmodified phone just works with a satellite. Engineers gave it a name, direct-to-cell. It runs on a new global standard called 3GPP non-terrestrial networks. The trick is that the satellite borrows your carrier's ordinary phone frequencies and beams them down from orbit. So to your phone, it looks exactly like a normal tower that happens to be very far away. This is also why texting came first, and it is not about speed. A text message is a few hundred bytes, so it slips through the thin pipe from space with room to spare. A phone call is a fire hose of data every second, and that fire hose does not fit yet, so the rollout goes in order. Texting first, then slow data, then real voice calls as more satellites go up and the pipe gets fatter. Now, the part almost every video gets wrong, so here's the honest 2026 map. Starlink and T-Mobile are live for texting and light data today, but full voice calling is announced, not switched on yet. A company called AST Space Mobile has demonstrated a real satellite voice call and is in limited beta with AT&T, not open to everyone. And Apple's emergency SOS has quietly worked since 2022, but only for narrow emergency messages. Real, but early. Think about what this changes. Around 90% of the Earth's surface has never had a cell tower and never will. The oceans, the deserts, the mountains. And when a hurricane or an earthquake flattens the towers on the ground, the ones in orbit are untouched. A stranded driver, a lost hiker, a whole town after a storm, all suddenly reachable. This is the slow end of the words no service. So the next time your phone says no signal, remember it may not stay true for long. The tower you need might be a bus-sized machine 340 miles overhead, cupping a giant ear toward your 1-watt whisper and catching it. No dish, no special phone, no cell tower at all. Follow for frontier tech, one mechanism a day. The antenna on the satellite does something remarkable. It is completely flat, like a pizza box, and has no motors, no moving parts at all. Inside are over 1,000 tiny radio patches, each one firing a pulse a tiny fraction of a second later than its neighbor. That time delay bends the beam the way a row of dominoes falling at an angle bends the wave. The beam can sweep 45 degrees per second to stay locked on a phone racing through its footprint below, and it switches targets in nanoseconds. Radio engineers write something called a link budget before building any satellite system. It is a balance sheet of every decibel gained or lost between your phone and the antenna overhead. You start with 30 decibels of transmit power, 1 watt from your phone. You add 34 decibels of gain from the big flat antenna. Then you subtract 161 decibels of free space path loss across 550 kilometers of vacuum. Add a few more for atmospheric losses. What arrives at the satellite's amplifier is 99 decibels below a milliwatt. The satellite's electronics are sensitive enough to hear exactly that. The frequency engineers chose for this matters enormously. Your phone's satellite link runs on L-band between 1 and 2 gigahertz. That frequency is special because its wavelength is about 20 centimeters, long enough to pass through rain, through fog, through thick clouds, and partially through walls. Higher frequencies carry more data but die in a drizzle. The phone already has the L-band antenna built in for older cellular bands, so no hardware changes are needed. The satellite chose the radio frequency your pocket already owns. The satellite screaming past at 7.8 kilometers per second shifts the radio frequency by up to 40 kilohertz, the same way a siren shifts pitch as it passes. Without correction, that puts your signal on the wrong channel and it gets dropped. Modern phones download the satellite's orbit from GPS data and predict the exact shift before even transmitting. They pre-correct the frequency, so what arrives at the satellite is right on target. Older phones rely on the satellite to do the correction on its side. Either way, the smear is erased before a single bit is lost. There are 2 types of satellite orbit, and the difference is the reason this technology exists at all. Geostationary satellites park 35,000 kilometers up, overhead forever, which sounds perfect. But the signal takes 550 milliseconds to get there and back. That half-second delay makes a phone call feel like talking through a tin can on a string. Low Earth orbit satellites fly at 500 kilometers and add only 20 milliseconds of round-trip delay, the same as a good landline. That gap is what makes voice calls feel human. No single satellite can blanket the planet. Each one at 550 kilometers altitude sees a footprint of about 4 million square kilometers, and it races overhead in 10 minutes. To stitch the whole surface into a seamless net, AST Space Mobile calculates it needs around 320 satellites in 8 orbital planes tilted at 40 degrees. Their footprints overlap enough that as one satellite sets in the west, the next one already rising in the east has taken the handoff. The design is a relay race that never stops. The moment that baton pass happens is called a handover, and if it is done right, you feel nothing. Your phone and the satellite negotiate a new connection before the old one breaks. The outgoing satellite flags the next one in line. Your phone receives a new timing reference and quietly switches, all in under 50 milliseconds, faster than you can blink. It is the same mechanism that hands you between cell towers as you drive down a motorway, except the towers are moving at 17,000 miles per hour. One satellite footprint can be shared by thousands of phones at once using time division access. The satellite slices every second into tiny windows and hands each phone a window to transmit in, like a teacher calling on one student at a time so nobody talks over anyone else. Today, a single satellite beam offers between 2 and 7 megabits per second in total, shared across every active phone. That is enough for text and basic data for many users at once, and it grows as more satellites go up and the hardware improves. At 550 kilometers altitude, the atmosphere is thin, but not nothing. It drags on each satellite continuously, and without periodic boosts, a dead satellite will spiral down and burn up within 3 to 5 years. That is by design. Satellite operators are required to clear their orbital slots within 5 years of mission end. Geostationary satellites at 36,000 kilometers have no such drag and orbit for centuries. LEO's low altitude is not just a latency advantage, it is also a built-in cleanup mechanism that keeps the highway from becoming a junkyard. The last thing to understand about this technology is that you have seen this arc before. A GPS receiver in 1990 cost $10,000 and filled a briefcase. Today, it is a 50-cent chip in a $5 toy. Wi-Fi, LTE, Bluetooth, every wireless standard followed the same curve. Expensive and specialist at first, then mass market inside a decade. The cost of a satellite data gigabyte has already fallen 1,000-fold in 10 years. The satellite connection on your phone today costs more than a cup of coffee per message. The satellite connection on your phone in 10 years will cost nothing you will ever think about. That is not optimism. That is the same arc. Again, if that made it click, hit subscribe. A fresh teardown drops every single day.